blown up if we don't have a little bit more common sense.
NATO hadn't actually encroached. He is preemptively doing this. You seem very reliant on accepting Putin's worldview.
Russia, throughout its history, has always believed in keeping some safety from the West, which has repeatedly invaded Russia. It's good for superpowers to keep a little distance. The United States, they lied, they cheated, and they started the expansion.
It's an argument you've espoused on Russian state TV.
Yeah, I tell it everywhere.
Why are you not as censorious about Putin doing the thing that you feel so angry about what you say America's done?
If they took Ukraine as a member of NATO, we will end up in nuclear war.
Welcome to The Truth. I'm John Gordon. We've got a lot to talk about today. Oh my gosh. That was a clip with Piers Morgan interviewing a Russian expert, an academician. And basically, his name is Jeffrey Sachs. He's been warning that the United States is not without fault in all of this. And the issue really has been ignited by the fact that NATO wants to move into the Ukraine. They want to join the Ukraine into NATO. And Putin's response has simply been, look, I don't want NATO and the United States on my border. I don't want them in my backyard. And that has led to the invasion of the Ukraine. And I have been warning the last 2 weeks that this is escalating at an ever-increasing, dramatic, and I think alarming and scary rate. Now, we've got Congressman Rich McCormick. He's a member of the United States House of Representatives on the Foreign Intelligence Committee, and he is going to join us in just a few minutes so that we can unpack this. But before we bring in Congressman McCormick, let's set the stage a little bit further. So the West says that they're going to join the Ukraine into NATO. And that opens the door to the United States putting nuclear weapons on Russia's border. Well, you know that we would not want Russian nuclear weapons in Cuba. We've already been down that path once before, or in Canada, or in Mexico. So I think we have to have a little empathy for Putin on this point. And so that has led him to invade the Ukraine because he wants to annex a portion of the Ukraine back into Russia, which is the other part of this. And the Ukrainian people, none of them, not one person in the Ukraine is willing to agree to that. So we have the makings of a world war being laid, the foundation being laid in the Ukraine right now. So as you listeners, if you were on the show last week or the week before, you know that I am very alarmed about an interview that Biden had with David Muir just 3 weeks ago in Normandy. Let's roll that clip, please.
Ukraine. I know for years you resisted the idea of American weapons being used for any sort of direct strike inside Russia. But we did witness this shift in recent days, authorizing American weapons for limited direct strikes. Are American weapons being used right now inside Russia?
They're authorized to be used in proximity to the border when they're being used on the other side of the border to attack specific targets in Ukraine. We're not authorizing strikes 200 miles into Russia. We're not authorizing strikes on Moscow, on the Kremlin.
Let me ask you about what Vladimir Putin said last night about this authorization of American weapons inside Russia. He said the supply of high-precision weapons to Ukraine for strikes on Russian territory is direct participation in this war. He went on to say that this is the way to serious problems, and again talked about Russia's nuclear capabilities. Does that concern you?
I've known him for over 40 years. He's concerned me for 40 years. He's not a decent man. He's a dictator. and he's struggling to make sure he holds this country together while still keeping this assault going. We're not talking about giving them weapons to strike Moscow, to strike the Kremlin, to strike just across the border where they're receiving significant fire from conventional weapons used by the Russians to go into Ukraine to kill the Ukrainians.
Just across the border. Can you believe what you have heard? Just across the Russian border. This is the illegitimate president of the United States, who I have no respect for, no regard for whatsoever. I've made that very clear. He is going to get us into a world war, you mark my word. And I keep warning about it, and I'm just worried sick. And this inept, corrupt president, that's the title that he has bestowed upon himself. The voters of the United States did not award him that title. You know that is my strongly held belief based on evidence that I'm personally aware of with respect to the election in Georgia. I've been very clear that I don't have direct evidence about Arizona, Minnesota, Michigan, Pennsylvania, but I know that Biden and his clan stole the election in Georgia, okay? So we sat an illegitimate person in the White House, and this is exactly what we're getting now. We've got the third term of Biden masquerading as Joe Biden. Obama, third term of Obama masquerading as Biden. And he's getting us into a world war. And I said, can you imagine if Putin went on the air and said, he's not going to bomb Washington and Memphis and Nashville or places on the interior of the United States. He's just going to bomb Miami and West Palm Beach, where I'm sitting right now, and San Francisco. What would the reaction be? Could you imagine how you would react as an American citizen if you heard the leader of the second or third most powerful country on earth say that he was going to bomb our country? But that's what Biden said. And I warned then that there would be a reaction, and probably a very strong reaction. And so what do we see? Well, here's proof positive. Let's run clip 3 there. Q.
A surface warship and a nuclear-powered submarine arrived in Havana to a 21-gun salute, beginning what the U.S. expects to be the largest Russian military exercises in the Caribbean in 5 years. U.S. officials say the exercises will also include flights by Russian long-range bombers along the East Coast.
It certainly wouldn't come as a surprise to us if we see more activity around the United States.
The 4-ship Russian flotilla has already passed just 30 miles off the coast of Florida as it made its way down from the North Atlantic to the Caribbean. The warship has been used in the past to test fire one of Russia's newest hypersonic missiles. The submarine is also designed to carry guided missiles, but U.S. officials say there is no indication it is carrying nuclear weapons.
We, of course, take it seriously, but these exercises don't pose a threat to the United States.
The Russian ships have been shadowed by a small U.S. Navy task force consisting of 2 destroyers along with 2 vessels specifically fitted with sonar for tracking submarines, patrol planes, even sail drones. The Russians are expected to remain in Havana until next week before they get underway again, perhaps for Venezuela. When they do, officials say the Navy will start shadowing them again.
Good God, help us. Good Lord. Folks, I have 2 friends who have independently told me that they were out on the beach in West Palm Beach in the last few days, and they saw Russian ships off our coast. I personally saw about 4 boats that I've never witnessed before, screaming down the intercoastal waterway with their blue lights and sirens flashing at the same time that these Russian ships were seen off of our coast. And Biden is permitting this. Well, he caused it. Make no mistake, this was not Vladimir Putin causing this. This was our president, your president, somebody's president, not mine, Joe Biden, causing this because of his incompetence or his corruption. I don't know what's going on. It does not feel right to me. I'm worried sick about it. Here's what we've got. We've got Biden saying on national television that he's going to fire on Russia. Then Putin's response. He sends warships within sight of the West Palm Beach, Fort Lauderdale, and Miami coast, making their way to Cuba. And then, equally alarming to me, are visits that Putin has paid not only to China in the last month. He called on Chairman Xi in China, and then this week he shows up in North Korea.
He's tonight at the red carpet welcome for Vladimir Putin arriving in North Korea. Putin, of course, has praised North Korea for supporting the war in Ukraine. Here's Martha Raddatz tonight.
Tonight, two of America's fiercest adversaries together on North Korean soil. Vladimir Putin arriving in Pyongyang for the first time in nearly a quarter of a century, greeting the Russian president on the red carpet, Kim Jong-un, talking animatedly, each leader insisting the other enter the limousine first. But this is a relationship born out of need. Kim seeking help from Russia with nuclear and ballistic missile technology, and Putin increasingly relying on North Korea for hundreds of thousands of artillery rounds and missiles in his fight against Ukraine. Kim and Putin met once before, last year in Russia, but this North Korea trip, with hours of one-on-one meetings planned for Wednesday and the streets of Pyongyang lined with Putin's portrait, sends a strong signal to the West that the so-called axis of dictators is only growing stronger. While the U.S. says Putin's trip shows desperation in his fight against Ukraine, officials make no secret that Putin's public embrace of Kim is troubling. David?
You think troubling? I think that may be the understatement of the century. My dad served in World War II. I was born and came into the world on the heels of the Korean War. I lived through the Vietnam War and the Cuban Missile Crisis. I have watched our country fight wars in Iraq, Afghanistan. I've never been as outright terrified for the safety of our country as I am right now. This inept president is going to bring us to a world war, and I keep asking myself, to what end? Why is he doing this? As you know, I have speculated that there may be an ulterior motive to all of this, and we're going to unpack it all with Congressman Rich McCormick. He is a congressman from Georgia. He lives just north of Atlanta, and this guy's. Do we have Congressman McCormick? Gizmo, reach out to Congressman McCormick's people and see if he's trying to get on with us. Let me just type a quick note here and see, where is the congressman? He may have been listening to the show and headed for the a place of safety. I don't know. My purpose is not to scare you. It's not to alarm you, but it is to inform you. And these are not things that I've made up. These are not things that are a product of my imagination. These are things that we are all witnessing as we speak. And let's see here. I just got word from Congressman McCormick's people. I'm trying to see what it says here. Oh, he needs the meeting ID, I believe. Gizmo, can you get Congressman McCormick the meeting ID? He'll join us here shortly. But this is serious stuff, and this president is playing a very dangerous game, and one that I am more than just a little concerned about. So I'm going to introduce Congressman McCormick, even though we don't have him on the line yet, but we're working on it. Rich McCormick is a congressman from Georgia 6th. He was raised by a single mom and had a paper route while he was in middle school. Worked his way through Oregon State and then joined the Marines. This is one really special guy. Through decades of service, he was deployed in Africa, the Persian Gulf, and Afghanistan. He is a helicopter pilot, which is something that he and I share, except my helicopter piloting has been around South Georgia, and his was in the Middle East. He taught at Georgia Tech and attended medical school at Morehouse College for medicine. He has an MBA from National University. And get this, while he was at Morehouse, I didn't even know that white guys went to Morehouse. I applaud him for having done so. But he was president of the student body at Morehouse. And it's my honor and privilege to welcome Congressman Rich McCormick to The Truth. Congressman, welcome.
Hey, good to be with you. Sorry for the technical delays.
Hey,
I am
listen,
a Marine after all, and any technologies are always suspect.
It's live radio and television. Believe me, we have had our share of fun over the last 2 years that we have been doing this, but this experience was the least of our troubles. Thank you for coming on. We are coming to you today on the John Fredericks Media Network. We are on in Atlanta, Nashville, Memphis, our newest affiliate, Richmond, Norfolk, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, and the entire state of West Virginia. Congressman McCormick is from Georgia 6. I don't know if you heard the introduction, Congressman, but you have lived a life that, I mean, it sounds like what 10 people would live.
And none of it was planned out. It's funny. I grew up in a single parent family. My mom was a secretary. She didn't care about academics. She didn't care about sports. She's just trying to make it to the next day, which is kind of funny. What most of the world is trying to do is make it to the next day. We're lucky in America. We have everything kind of given to us on a silver platter. Matter of fact, I think it's kind of corrupted our children to where they don't understand what's important. They don't understand service. I've done the same thing with my children. I tell them how good looking they are, how good their sports, how successful they're going to be. And it kind of makes them about them, and they lose the bigger perspective. I think my life has been driven by whatever God told me with the next thing was supposed to be. And I've always been drawn almost like a magnet to the military or to medicine or to politics, almost this irresistible pull towards something different. I'm sure much like you ended up here, where you're doing right now is something you probably didn't grow up thinking you do.
Well, actually, I've been doing it since I was in high school. So
well, never mind.
It's never been a source of income for me, and it still isn't. This show actually cost about $50,000 or $60,000 a year to produce, but I do it because I really do like you. I haven't demonstrated it like you have, but I love America, and I want a country that my children and grandchildren can grow up in with the opportunities that you and I have enjoyed. And so that's why I do it. I'm not looking for fame or fortune. I'm certainly not getting fortune. I would like to increase our reach because I feel like I have something to say, and I do very much want to educate our audience. Now, did you listen to the introduction of the show? You were probably scrambling to get on.
I was scrambling, I caught the very end. I think you're talking about Morehouse School of Medicine there.
Yeah. And you're a white guy who went to Morehouse and became president of the student body. How did you achieve that?
It's funny. The reason I went to Morehouse, I taught at Morehouse College as well as Spelman, Clark Atlanta, and Georgia Tech as the Marine officer instructor. And then when I put in my applications for medical school, I only put in 4 applications, all of them in the Georgia schools. And I got accepted to Mercer, as well as I got waitlisted at MCG, got turned down by Emory, got accepted by Morehouse. And Morehouse was the closest school to me. I went through a divorce, ended up a single parent of 3 little boys, 2, 3, and 5 with full custody. And so I wanted to stay close to my support network, where I knew I could have people help me while I was in medical school and residency. And that's exactly what happened. I was very fortunate to go there. It was really a cool experience too, socially, because you got to figure people who don't think like you, it's about 60% female, 80% black, about 95% liberal. And then the same year Obama was elected president of the United States, I was elected student body president. Well, how does that happen? Especially when I don't hide my politics. I wasn't in people's face, but here's what I keep on saying. I feel like I'm a messenger, just like you were just talking about. We need to spread a message. I feel like the message that I'm here to put out to the Republican Party is, if you want real influence, if you want to know how I became student body president, quite frankly, it's because I never tried to win an argument. I try to win a friend first. Now, that doesn't mean I don't get in arguments, because people pick them with me all the time, inside and outside of my party. They just come at me just hammering. But generally speaking, if I'm trying to convince somebody, if I'm trying to grow my church, I don't invite somebody to the Bible study by calling them an idiot. I don't punch somebody in the face and then say, hey, come join my club. We have to be very succinct. We're on the right side of history. We have the right arguments, but being right doesn't win the argument. We know that if you go on the internet, nobody gets on the internet saying, gosh, I hope somebody proves I'm an idiot today. Nobody. But if you can prove somebody that you love them, you want what's best for them, you want what's best for this country, and you convince them over and over again, they will be loyal to you and you'll have great influence. And that's one of the things we need to do better as a Republican Party.
Well, that's a skill set I need to adopt, and maybe you could go over and talk to your colleague, Marjorie Taylor Greene, about that approach as well. I love her passion. I love her fire, but, she's got to soften it up a little bit, because we've got to get along with these other members of Congress. And this country is evenly divided as any country as I've ever seen. And so we've got, I like what you just said very much, Rich, that we've got to figure out how to get along. And when you think about, we were talking about Morehouse and your experience there. I'm not sure whether you're aware of it or not, but I have a charity in Atlanta called the Friends of English Avenue, which is approximately located to Morehouse and the Atlanta universities there. And it's the poorest zip code in America, of 60 square blocks of every social ill that you can imagine. The worst zip code for HIV per capita, homelessness, poverty, illiteracy, and hopelessness. And so after Katherine Johnston, the 92-year-old grandmother who was shot and killed by the Atlanta police in 2006, we went there and started this charity, and we have worked to try and revitalize and help the people that live in that community. And just to kind of summarize and end this point, I have found that the people that live there are beautiful, wonderful people with a very good, generous spirit. It's the damn leadership that is the problem. And they're the ones who stir up the racism and the hate. And Councilman Ivory Young, who was a friend of mine, the late Councilman Ivory Young, called them the poverty pimps. And it really kind of opened my mind and eyes to the world of people like Jesse Jackson and the Reverend Al Sharpton, who feed on people's fears and hate. And I think that is the problem. But I think that for an all-black school to elect a white guy as president of the student body may be the best thing that could have ever happened to healing the racial strife that we see in this country today. It seems like to me that we're always working as white people to try and build the bridge with blacks, and I have not seen a lot of reciprocity, but what you've experienced certainly is an indication of what I'm talking about, and the good spirit of black people that I believe in general.
Well, I think you're seeing a huge explosion of black conservative politicians, which is great. One of the things that I caution some of the people in our party, though, is when you disagree with anybody on any specific topic, it doesn't make them a bad person. Reagan had it right. If you want to look back at how we got back to control, when Reagan took over, we had basically been in control of Congress maybe 4 out of 62 years. We were in dire straits. We were not a political relevant party, really. Reagan brought us back from that to dominate. Literally winning by 12.5%, winning almost 50 of 50 states. That's incredible. How do you do it? Because he didn't have to have everybody agree with him on everything. And he didn't lambaste you when you disagreed on something, but he tried to continue to be charming and convincing. And so he brought people over to a way of thinking, not because he was proving them wrong, but because he painted an American dream so so brilliantly from 63 to 89, same message: smaller government, defeat communism, and it's okay if you disagree with me on some things. He said that, the 80% rule. He said that we should never speak poorly about another Republican. That's kind of behind the closed doors type stuff that we do. It's okay to disagree. It's okay to debate. But when we vilify each other for disagreeing, we have a real problem. And this is biblical, man. You name me a church, name me any church in America where everybody agrees with everything the minister says or anything the leadership says. That's a cult. We are not a cult. We're the Republican Party. We're allowed to disagree without making each other villains.
Well, that's very well said. And, I'm was more close to people in the Trump world when I was running for AG than I am now. I mean, I love Trump. I'm for him. I'm doing everything I can to help him. But, the guy is transactional and he is not Reagan. And I've said to his people, if he could just take one step towards the middle. And he can call Liz Cheney out as a warmonger because I think she is deserved of that characterization. However, just don't call her a loser, dude. I mean, that is just taking one step beyond where you need to go. And, psychologists will tell you that when you call someone else out and when you apply a label to them, the listener actually hears that label applied to you. And I think that is the president, who I love. I think that is his trouble. If he would take one step to the middle and just try to be a little bit like Ronald Reagan, I think the entire country would rally behind him. But listen, I've got some really important stuff that I've got to talk to you about. You are on the Armed Services Committee of the United States House of Representatives in our Congress. And the opening of our show today was about the escalation that I am seeing and that frankly terrifies me that is going on as an outgrowth of the Ukraine. And so I'm going to summarize what we talked about at the top of the show as quickly but as succinctly as I can, but also make the points. One, Putin went into Ukraine for two reasons, I think. One is he wants to try and recreate the former Soviet Union, and so he's wanting to annex a portion of the Ukraine. Nobody in Ukraine wants him to do that. So that is his motivation for going there to begin with, but he's also taking a stand that the West and NATO is not going to establish military bases and nuclear weapons in Ukraine, which I personally understand. It would be no different than if he were to put nuclear weapons in Mexico or Canada. I think we would have something to say about that, just like we're going to get to in just a minute about Cuba. But this illegitimate person that we have installed as President of the United States went on ABC News with David Muir. We played the clip at the top of the show and said he is not going to bomb Moscow and 200 miles into the interior of Moscow. He's just going to bomb along the Moscow border that is adjacent to the Ukraine, which I have analogized as if Biden were to say, I'm not going to bomb Moscow, which he said, I'm sorry, I'm saying the reverse. If Putin were to say, I'm not going to bomb Washington and Atlanta and Memphis, I'm just going to bomb Miami, West Palm Beach, and San Francisco. That is the equivalent of what Biden has said to Vladimir Putin. So what do we get in return? We get 4 Soviet warships and a nuclear submarine in Cuba right now. Friends of mine, 2 of them independently told me that they witnessed Soviet warships going down the coast of Florida right here in West Palm Beach, a mile from where I am sitting, just this past week. They personally witnessed this. Now, I have lived through all sorts of wars and skirmishes, including the Cuban Missile Crisis, and I've observed the Vietnam War, and God knows my hat is off to you and our thanks for your service in Afghanistan and the Middle East and Africa, all the places that you've served. But this is as scary as it gets to me. Do you share my concern? And should we be alarmed right now with what we're seeing?
Well, I'm always sharing concern about what Russia's doing. This is a deep and wide subject, and I'm going to probably do a podcast on it shortly to kind of break down every element that you just talked about and more from the very beginning. I remember when Putin was being interviewed by Tucker Carlson, and his opening dialogue, he talks about the justification of Hitler invading Poland because Poland wouldn't give him what he wanted. He literally said that, and so. This is, and he made it analogous to what he did in Ukraine. If you look at the long storied history of Ukraine, its national borders, whether it be Crimea or the other eastern portions of Ukraine. If you want to use the justification that there's Nazis there or they speak Russian there, hey, watch out, because Southern California is going to be mostly Spanish speaking, and that's used to be Mexican territory that we forcefully took from them. Does that mean that they have the right to come back and take it from us if they could? Of course not. So we had to be consistent in our thought process that includes in all of our populist theories. But if you want to talk about Ukraine as a whole and what it means to us as far as how it could start a war, and by the way, we're at war, whether we like to admit it or not. Now, I'm not sure. I haven't heard the sound clip of Biden. I heard what you said, and I heard rumblings of that. What I think he's referring to is allowing Ukraine to use medium to long range munitions in the places that Russia is launching attacks from, including artillery and drone attacks from. He's not talking about the United States doing
yes,
that.
But the point is, and you're right, and that is an important distinction. But the point is that they're using American supplied munitions to bomb Russia, and that's
so. Let's be consistent with the thought, though. Here, Israel is outside of Israel right now, going into Gaza, doing exactly the same stuff with our weapons. Now the question is, wait, Israel was attacked by Gaza, by people in Gaza, Hamas, right? What about Hezbollah in Lebanon, or what about whatever? The question is, should Israel only be able to attack inside of Israel, and as soon as those Hamas go, they have to stay inside their borders? This is a consistent thought. You know, are they a sovereign country or are they not? Are they going to be able to fight a war against Russia, who's basically just launched attack after attack after attack without having any fear of retribution? They don't even have to defend those spots because we're not allowing them to counterattack their artillery batteries that literally can reach out and touch them from right there. You're literally tying their hands. They already have about 6.5 times less population in Ukraine. They have a GDP that's 1/20th the size of Russia. And you think, well, how can they win this? Why do we even get bothered? And I agree, by the way, if we're not going to commit to this, then don't do anything. Because the last thing I want to do is see another slow-rolled war, whether it be Afghanistan, Iraq, Vietnam, Korea. I hate slow-rolling war because it's a good way to lose a war, and there's no reason for us to sacrifice anything.
I think what you just said, that is it, Congressman. And that's the difference between going into Gaza, which I fully support. I mean, these people have beheaded little children and have killed pregnant women. Look, I think there are two sides to every story. I think that the people that live in Gaza and the Palestinians have certainly grievances that we should listen to and that we should try to address. But they deprive us from having any sympathy for them when they commit the kind of atrocities that they do. I want to see their point of view, but they won't let me because of the way they behaved. But
I got you. But let's talk about this as far as Russia goes. Russia has killed way more Ukrainians than where Israelis were called. They kidnapped as many children, way more kids than were beheaded in Israel. They have literally hand-tied people's hands behind their head and executed them. This is Russia.
But you didn't let me finish the last sentence. The difference is that Palestine does not possess nuclear weapons. They are not the second most powerful nation in the world. And I'm telling you that my sense is that we are provoking them into a possible nuclear war, which will be the end of mankind. We did a segment last week on the show. There are 12 countries that have nuclear weapons. What was it, Q? 3% of the nuclear weapons is enough to wipe out 3 billion people. It is a line that we cannot cross. And I think that we are crossing that line. You know, it doesn't happen overnight. It's incremental and it evolves. And what I'm seeing is that we are evolving into a potential world war. My other reasons for being concerned is that I'm watching everything I can observe. And Putin has been to China in the last month and met with Xi. And now this week, he just got back, or maybe is still there, in North Korea, meeting with Rocket Man, who we now believe also possesses nuclear weapons. That's where I'm coming from. Now,
okay, so let's do a history walk on this real quick. Do you agree that Kennedy did the right thing by threatening nuclear war with Russia when they wanted to plant nuclear arms in Cuba?
I don't think that tells the whole story.
I'm just asking because the reason I ask
I
is
can't
because
answer yes or no because yes, he was justified, but he and Khrushchev had a backdoor channel. He and Khrushchev believed that nuclear war should be avoided at all costs, and they developed a certain amount of kinship and relationship.
Do you agree that Reagan should have been involved in Afghanistan when we defeated the Russians, who wasn't obviously a nuclear power at the time? We stood up against Russia. We took Stinger missiles in there. We took out their air war. We basically defeated Russia in Afghanistan through Reagan.
Totally agree. In Afghanistan, not across the Russian border. That's the difference, and that's what I'm concerned about.
But once again, though, Russia wasn't staging attacks from Russia into Afghanistan the same way. Otherwise, we were allowed probably the same kind of concept. Same thing with Vietnam. When we were in Vietnam, we went into Cambodia and Laos because they were staging stuff into there too. And the only time we did well in Vietnam is when we did surge ops, Rolling Thunder 1 and 2, to take out their backbone. And like I said, we have a $47 trillion economy between Europe and the United States. Russia has a $2 trillion economy. We have so many advantages economically, and that through sanctions and through munitions, we can make this over within 1 year. And I'm all for that. Or I'm all for not getting involved at all. But the problem is we made an agreement back with the Budapest Accords when Ukraine gave up their nuclear arms, and you're talking about the nuclear proliferation treaties, right? So if you're going to get a country to give up their, let's say we got Korea to give up their nuclear arms in the future, and we say, if you give up your nuclear arms, I will actually defend you. But they go, well, you didn't do that with Ukraine. You said you were going to, but you said no. And then when you gave your word to NATO, and by the way, NATO, remember, makes up a great part of the EU. And Germany is now getting closer to us. Other countries, Poland, Romania, all these countries are snuggling up to the United States. If we turn our back on NATO now, after unanimously voting to support Ukraine, how does that show us leadership? And how does that show China that we're going to have any resolution against Taiwan, who makes 100% of our AI chips? 100% of our AI chips. When they said they're going to go in 2027, do they mean it like Putin meant it when he said, I'm going to go into Crimea, or I'm going to go into Russia, or into Latvia, Estonia? And now maybe he changes his mind back and forth. But my question to you is, are we going to be held hostage because he has nuclear weapons and we can't do anything now? And my whole thing is, let's end this. Either one way or another, get out and take the goo on the face that we don't hold our word, or go all in and sanctions and make sure they have the munitions to fight this and make it so painful that he has to say, no, I'm not willing to do this, like they did in Afghanistan when they withdrew.
Well, just to sum it up, I think that everything that you said, I am totally on board with. I just think that we're playing a very, very dangerous game by the President of the United States going on national television and saying that he has authorized the use of U.S.-made munitions to attack Russia. I think that is a line that we should not have crossed, and that it is begging for trouble. And I'm going to come back to that in a little bit, to talk about why. Why on earth would we take that step? But I'm hearing you say you're okay with it. You think that it's just part and parcel of where we are and what we have to do to defend our national stature and the obligation that we've assumed in Ukraine, is what I'm hearing you say.
If you're going to fight a war, big if, right? If you're going to commit to something, don't go in with your hands tied. We spend so much time in warfighting school, in command and staff school, in war college, learning what we shouldn't do. And this president has done everything you shouldn't do. First of all, he shows weakness. He doesn't carry a big stick. He doesn't even talk softly. He talks big, and he carries a little stick.
Well, I think it's worse than that. I think he's corrupt. I think that he's owned by China, and I think that we know that Hunter Biden's taken $3.5 million from the mayor of Moscow, diamonds and a Porsche from a Russian oligarch. I mean, how much more information do we need? Let's get back to that in a little bit. But I do want to move on from this, but I really appreciate what you've said, and you are the authority. I'm not. And I called you on here to learn, so I'm going to reflect on what you said. You and I have always agreed on virtually everything, except when you endorsed DeSantis. And now I don't think we should be letting our American-made munitions used in Russia. But we'll save that for a later day. I want to get now to the reason I really had you on the show, which I think may be one of the greatest moments I've ever seen in the United States Congress when you confronted Anthony Fauci. Before we get to that, I want to ask you, I just, I watch so intently, and my son says that it's a mistake. We do share a lot in common, Congressman. I too have 3 sons, and I also fly helicopters. But my youngest son said, "Dad, quit watching the news and YouTube. It's making you crazy." He said, "Just go play tennis and enjoy life." And at 72, I probably should be doing that. But I am watching the story start to evolve on bird flu. Are we looking towards the next pandemic?
So I think this is going to be used once again to leverage pandemonium. The government loves it when you have a crisis because then they can seize power, they can tax and spend more. Preparing for bird flu, we've had bird flu before. We've had swine flu. We've had all these diseases. And remember, I think about 40,000 people died from swine flu. And ironically, the older generation did not because they've been exposed to something similar in the past. They actually had this actually focused on the younger people. Now, when we had the outbreak of COVID, everybody had no basically resistance to this disease, but it really picked off the weak. It thinned the herd, so to speak. The same people that would die of urinary tract infections, pneumonia, things that would typically kill older people, really picked on those people with comorbidities, hypertension, diabetes, obesity, those kind of people. They did very poorly with the disease. They're going to try to sensationalize bird flu to once again take more control of our lives. This is what I really picked on Fauci on. How dare you take away my rights to decide what's safe and what's not safe? That's what doctors are for, not government. And government literally censored me, tried to threaten my license because I disagreed with them. And they're like, well, we didn't know. We didn't know if you were right or wrong. But I ended up being right. You ended up being wrong, but you censored me. That's a problem.
They
we should
censored
never
you,
give up our
and
rights.
they censored anybody on Twitter who would go against the government narrative. And we know now that Mike Taibbi uncovered that our own FBI paid Twitter $3.4 million to censor people, including yourself. This is our government doing that.
Yep. And these are people who did not treat COVID, by the way, but they used and this is the problem with anybody who wants to take, I don't care if it's a Republican too, by the way. I do not want to see the government take away a business's right to make decisions or a person's right to make medical decisions or the ability to travel, all the things that we've been given. I mean, shoot, America was founded on one principle that we take chances. And that includes throwing our kids in the back of a wagon, going west, maybe freezing, maybe starving, maybe being killed. But if you make it, you live in the American dream.
Well, let's roll this clip of you and Fauci. It was just this week, right?
Oh, yeah, well, it's a couple weeks ago now.
2 weeks ago now. It's hard for me to keep up with the timing on everything that's going on because, man, there is a ton. Good Lord, I worry about the world and where we are. But let's roll this clip.
Treated a patient for COVID. You can read all the things you want, but you're not there. You're not seeing patients. You're not watching people die, intubating patients right there with that disease in your face, watching it happen, watching the development of this disease and actually learning from it. But I'm being told by bureaucrats what's right and wrong. And what's funny is everything I was censored on, I was proven to be right. Pretty crazy, isn't it? You said in an interview that you gave as part of an audio book written by Michael Spector that you believed an institutional should make it hard for people to live their lives so they'd feel pressured to get vaccinated. Could we run the audio clip on that, please?
You think can be done about it? I have to say that I don't see a big solution other than some sort of mandatory vaccination. I know federal officials don't like to use that term.
Once people feel empowered and protected legally, you are going to have schools, universities, and colleges are going to say, you want to come to this college, buddy? You're going to get vaccinated. Lady, you're going to get vaccinated.
Yeah.
Big corporations like Amazon and Facebook and all of those others are going to say, you want to work for us, you get vaccinated. And it's been proven that when you make it difficult for people in their lives, they lose their ideological bullshit and they get vaccinated.
I don't know.
Thank you. Are all objections to COVID vaccinations ideological bullshit?
Did you do it?
Dr. Fauci?
No, they're not, and
Thank
that's
you.
not what I was referring to.
Well, in reference to making it hard for people to get education, traveling, working, I'd say it very much was in context. And I take great offense to this.
Well, I hope you have some good friends at the FCC, because I'm probably going to get knocked off the air now for playing something that we're not supposed to be able to say on the air. But it's so true. I mean, what we now know, because we've gotten the emails, good Lord, there's so much to unpack here. But Fauci, you talk about Hillary Clinton and her private email server. Fauci was using Gmail accounts so that what he was communicating on official government business would not be subject to FOIA. We know that out of that committee meeting that we were just watching. But now we have his own admission that the vaccines were imposed on people and that they created this scare tactic mechanism to encourage people or to enable the government actually to mandate vaccines. Do I get it right?
Not only scare tactics, but strong arming, right? They literally took a crisis, once again, made people scared enough that they would accept government imposing over your rights. And then if you still didn't accept that, and quite frankly, we used to just discuss in the ER, we'd say, okay, we'd like you to get a vaccination. This is when the first generation came out. And people were like, no, thank you. And like, no, really, we want you to get a vaccination. They're like, no, I'm okay. No, can you get a vaccination? Like, screw you, get out of my face. People, if you're American, if the worst thing you could do is say, I'm going to force you to do something. This is America. We are used to being fiercely independent. And that's why I don't think it's good, even inside of our party, to force anybody to think anything. If you want to if you want people to get a vaccination, say, oh, there's only so many vaccinations, I don't know if you'll be able to get it. People probably flock to it. But once you say you have to get it, people get very suspicious. And then we found out in the second round of vaccinations that actually are giving vaccinations to people who are already immune. They're having hyperimmune responses, but they didn't care. It was all about their power, having one ideology, government control, whether you can travel, have your business open, whether your kids could go to school. Shame on them. And we allowed that to happen.
There was so much that I want to ask you about with COVID. I've got also a whole list of other topics in the short time that we've got remaining. We're talking to Congressman Rich McCormick. He is a doctor, and not like Dr. Jill. He is actually an MD and treats people in the emergency rooms, and is an American patriot, a veteran. And it's just an honor to have him on the John Fredericks Media Network today. We also are coming to you live on rumble.com, on Getter Live, where we now have over 2,000 people interacting with us live on Getter. You can come there, and if you'll send a question, I'll make sure that Congressman McCormick receives it here on the show today. We are also on YouTube Live, and today is our inaugural on CD Media. CD Media is a global wire service network with 13 digital properties. They have the same value that we have on this program. They are committed to the truth, and they work for no one. They're not owned by anyone, and they have been deplatformed because they have told the truth over the last 5 years. And their platforms are actually throttled by big tech, which is suppressing the amount of people that are exposed to them. So if you want to do yourself and the truth a favor, go subscribe to CD Media right now, and you can get them in your daily scan, and you'll learn the truth on a daily basis at cdmedia.com. So we're talking to Dr. Rich McCormick, Congressman from Georgia 6. You said a very important word, I think. You know, this narrative that anytime you question anything, you're just some right-wing MAGA crazed conspiratorialist. But you used the right word that I think is troubling Americans today, and that is suspicion. Everywhere we look, we have suspicion. And every time we have suspicion, we're told not to look there, nothing there to see. We're just some right-wing MAGA conspiratorialist. Yet, we know that the coronavirus did not originate in a bat cave, like Dr. Fauci told us. It actually originated in the Wuhan lab, which the NIH, which he was in charge of, was helping fund. Then he tries to cover the whole thing up. No wonder Americans, including me, are suspicious. So my question to you, Congressman, was it unintentional, or is there a possibility that this horrible pandemic was the result of someone's intentional act? I ask you.
I think my opinion, and it's only an opinion because we can't prove anything because they basically had people disappear. They would not give open files for our investigation. This is why we don't fund them anymore. But they asked for gain of function studies, and we said, no, we don't think you should, but they did it anyways. That a lot of times happens when people start a study and then they ask permission later. They did gain of function. I don't think they meant to get it out because they let it out in China first. I mean, quite frankly, it's very easy to close down a communist country, a lot easier than a free country. But quite frankly, it didn't work there anyway. They just prolonged the disease there longer because, as we know, as we shut things down, it just prolonged the agony. It didn't help the overall outcome. Or you look at countries that literally did no controls whatsoever, and they fared at least, if not better, than the United States because it had to run its course. The vaccination maybe helped with the first generation when we had no immunity. Once we had immunity, man, the vaccination did real harm, in my opinion. But once again, that's between you and your doctor. And this is where I differ from people like Marjorie Taylor Greene. Marjorie Taylor Greene thinks we should make vaccinations illegal. Nobody should be able to get them for COVID. I maybe agree with that, but I don't think we should ever force people because as soon as I say, you can't have a vaccination, don't talk to your doctor. Well, once again, I'm putting the government above your doctor and your relationship. Whether I agree with you or not, it's none of my business to get involved because that's your life. Now, if it's you abusing your child or killing your child, that's a different thing. But if it's about you and your health decision, I may disagree with your doctor. I may disagree with you, but I'm the government. I'm not supposed to be that powerful. And that's the problem is the government became way too powerful and we allowed it. And that's what scares me is that the next thing, doesn't matter if it's climate change or COVID, that's the way they tax and spend. That's this whole climate farce that we're in control of the climate and that we're going to somehow or another spend our way out of it is just another reason that they can take more charge, spend more money, get us more into debt, ruin our economy, and then be king of the ashes.
Well, I think you've touched on the next topic I want to move us toward, and that is the power of the government. And where is the Congress in stepping in to limit the power of the government? Because it's really off the rails. The model is upside down. The government is supposed to be servant leaders to the people, and now we are at the we are at the disposal of the government, as we've seen with what has happened with the lawfare against President Trump and Anthony Fauci, a certified known liar, still has his government pension, and he still has a government provided chauffeur. And then we get to the J6 commission, which was, we know, not constituted according to the laws of Congress. And you've got Merrick Garland, who refuses to respond to a validly, lawfully issued subpoena by the United States Congress. And he is just flicking you all off, saying you can't touch me, while Steve Bannon and Dr. Peter Navarro, both of whom I know are Bannon's not yet, but he's about to be in prison. Peter Navarro is 80 miles south of me right now in a federal penitentiary in Miami for refusing to go before the January 6th committee. My God, what is going on? And worse than that, does the name Brandon Fellows mean anything to you?
It's not a familiar name to me.
It's okay. It's not somebody that you should necessarily know. But do we have that next clip? Is clip 6, I believe? Yeah, this is it. Let's run. I don't know, Congressman, can you see Fauci here?
I cannot.
Okay, so we've got Anthony Fauci here, and roll that clip, Q, if you would. And we've got a young man sitting behind him, and he is smirking at Fauci.
Oh, yeah. I do know. Yes, I do know about that.
You know who I'm talking about. Making faces
I do.
Because of his utter disbelief and his incredulousness over what Fauci is saying before this committee. Well, do you know who Brandon Fellows is? I mean, you know that he was sitting behind Fauci, but do you know anything about his background?
I do, just because I didn't know that was his name, but I knew about his story. And he was one of the January 6 folks that caught all kinds of legal hell over something that's essentially nothing compared to what, and you actually think about this. They came after Trump post-presidency for a whole bunch of things. What did they come after Hillary Clinton for? Hillary Clinton broke the law, like, distinctly. She destroyed evidence.
Doesn't even deny it.
Denied subpoenas. And the fact that Trump didn't come after her, I think, was one of his mistakes. I think he should. I mean, you want to talk about fair. I mean, if you can come after Trump for the things they came after him for, she literally obstructed justice, destroyed evidence, denied subpoena. She did everything wrong, and nothing happened to her, not one thing.
Well, there does not seem to be accountability when it's about a Democrat. Only Republicans seem to be held accountable for it. And the governor of New York has said, and I'm going to go down this path, and I don't have the names, and that's going to be a problem. But she has said, "Oh, don't worry, unless your name is Trump." And you have misstated your financials. You're okay in New York. We're not going to do anything bad to you. But now we learn that there is a South American company in Brazil that is in the meat packing business, and they are being prosecuted by Letitia James because of their what she claims is false advertising relative to climate change and the climate change and the initiatives that they promised to put in. They have said that those things are going to take effect in 2040. She's prosecuting them for not doing something that the time hasn't even arrived for them to do it yet, according to their own published materials. Meanwhile, there's a guy in New York right now who has been in jail, and I cannot remember his name. I had it written down and I can't find it, but he has been in jail without bond for a year, charged with fraud. There are no victims. There are no complainants. There is no evidence of his engaging in any fraud. In fact, he has built several social media platforms that are just going gangbusters. His investors cheer for him in public. Next Saturday on The Truth, I'm going to get the video clips and we'll play them. But he is being prosecuted, and the reason that people believe that he is being prosecuted because he is public enemy number one in China. And Chairman Xi is determined to get him back to China, with which we have no extradition treaty. However, if he is convicted of a crime in the United States, then he is subject to being extradited to China. And many people who have studied this believe that if he goes back to China, he will be murdered by China, and which is the other point I was going to make, Congressman. China doesn't value human life like we do. So when you say, yeah, it was the coronavirus was unleashed in China first, true, but they have committed genocide against their own people. So I don't know that that proves what you're saying, but I have thought that myself. Maybe someday we'll know the truth. We'll take it for sake of argument now that it was unintentional, but I worry about it. So Brandon,
I worry about the next generation when they actually do design a engineered virus, because this is the technology we have now that will attack certain genetics, like go after European descent. Yeah. It'll leave the Asian descent alone. It'll pick on a certain receptor that most Europeans have that they don't have. That's the next generation. You see it in James Bond movies. It's now a reality. Now it won't happen like it's sprayed out and all of a sudden people just die right there on the spot. But it will literally be just like COVID, but designed for certain nationalities. That's the way of the future, is to scare everybody.
We've got about 2 more minutes before we have to take a station break. Can you stay with us just a few more minutes? I've already imposed on your time. You're so generous. You've got 3 boys at home. I take it that you're in Georgia right now. It looks like you're at home, and that we're taking you away from your family and your kids. The sacrifices that you made for your country and continue to make, I really appreciate, and I recognize, and I celebrate. And I don't want to take advantage of your good nature by keeping you on here. I asked you for 15 minutes. It's been 45, and now I'm asking you for another 5 or 10. But 2020, you think we were robbed? You think?
I think so. I mean, I think 2,000 Mules kind of painted the picture. It also shows that it's very hard to prove, because once that ballot went in the drop box, which thankfully we fixed that problem, how do you prove that it was from the wrong person? The fact that people could order ballots from somebody and not even know. I was told I won that night in 2020. I was told at like 1:30 at night. And then at 2 o'clock in the morning, I get this call, oh, we found 70,000 more ballots that we don't think were called. What do you mean you found? What does that even mean? I mean, it was an insane night going back and forth with those folks. Nothing mathematically made sense. Except for that they corrupted the system, but it's very hard to prove, as we found out.
Well, I will tell you that we have proven it, and I can't speak to the other swing states, but I worked on a lawsuit with Bob Shealy, Jefferson Satira, against the Fulton Board of Elections. I've seen the evidence. We've talked about it on the show for the last 2 years. There is no question in my mind, as honestly as I could be, that election was stolen in Georgia. 3,200 duplicate ballots on Brad Raffensperger's own SOS website right now. You can go and look at. The Georgia Elections Board just met about a month ago, and they acknowledged for the first time that there were problems with the 2020 election. We have 14,000 people on the voter roll that I have seen, that when you alphabetize them by first name, their voter ID is perfectly sequential. There is so much evidence of fraud in the 2020 election in Georgia that it is numbing and it is alarming. Joe Rossi has delved into it. David Cross delved into it, both independently of one another. They both come up with 40,000 illegal votes in Fulton County alone, 400,000 in the state of Georgia, which is getting me to the question I want to ask you. Back to Brandon Fellows, back to Jan 6. To me, January 6th is I call Trump 2020 JFK 2.0. I firmly believe that the CIA assassinated Kennedy. I think the deep state, the permanent Washington, call it whatever you want to, politically assassinated Trump in 2020. And the January 6th Commission is the equivalent of the Warren Commission. It's the official government report that is going to absolve anyone from any wrongdoing in the 2020 election and turn the narrative around against the victims and point to them as the problem. And we now have this guy, Brandon Fellows. We're going to be right back. Station break, and we'll be right back with Congressman Rich McCormick. And we're back with Congressman Rich McCormick, Dr. Rich McCormick, Congressman from Georgia 6. We're talking about the J6 Commission and the 2020 election. And this kid, Brandon Fallows, I don't have an obsession around this, but it pains me. It pains me deeply. This kid went to the Capitol on January the 6th, 2021, and a day that we're all very familiar with. And he asked if he could come in, and the police officer said yes. And he went in, and the video, every inch of the Capitol is covered by video. The videos have now been made available, and you can see this kid. He went, I guess, to the what do you call it? Where all the statues are? That's not the
Statuary Hall.
Statuary Hall. He went to Statuary Hall, filmed the statues. I mean, this is putting a lump in my throat, frankly. He filmed the statues and he left the Capitol. The FBI accosted him days and months later and said, you either tell us that you went there because of what President Trump said and that he motivated you to go there, or we're throwing the book at you. We're going to charge you with trespassing. We're going to charge you with interference of an official congressional proceeding, and we're going to throw you in the slammer. He refused to do what they coerced him to do. He just got out, 3 years in prison. He said it was the hardest 3 years of his life. There were cockroaches coming up through the sink in the cell. I mean, I'll send you the link to this video. It is shocking. And this is the United States of America, where I never thought things like this could happen. But there are 350 other people that are rotting away in jail right now. Some of them who have not had habeas corpus hearings, who have not formally been charged. And this is the stuff that happens in third world countries. My God, Congressman, what is happening? But here's my question for you. And you're the good guy. I know you're the good guy. But good Lord, why have we not had Ray Epps subpoenaed, put his ass in front of the Judiciary Committee and subpoenaed all of his bank accounts, look at his canceled checks and his deposits, and ask him, who were you working for on January the 6th?
And it gets deeper, too. And here's what's interesting. Obviously, we have Congress. We don't have the Senate. We don't have the presidency. But Jim Jordan, who I respect very much, is the chair for Judiciary. And I've from the very beginning been like, why aren't things moving faster? I mean, it's been a year and a half since we've been in charge of Judiciary, and Jim Jordan has a lot of judges and lawyers on his Judiciary Committee, including Harriet Hagman, who I'll love, from Wyoming, including Laura Lee from Florida, who used to be the Secretary of State down there and also a judge. We have several judges on that committee. Why does it move so? Well, they couldn't even get through their initial gathering. They couldn't determine whether they could say the Pledge of Allegiance because they thought the Republicans didn't deserve it because we were insurrectionists. That's how gridlocked that committee is, and that's how slow it moves. They're the only way. Congress, I mean, I think Merrick Garland has another another vote coming up that he can't be avoided. He's not going to be judged just by DOJ, but by Congress in contempt and actually put in jail. I have a suspicion it won't pass because I think most people think it's too extreme. But I think it'll get a lot of votes. But it's just kind of messaging at that point. Well, but it's hard for Congress to, with that slim majority, to do anything of substance. Like when you have a 4-vote majority and you don't have the Senate, you don't have the presidency. Realistically, this is why we have to win the election. That's why we have to win this November. We have to take back the Senate, keep Congress, and win the presidency, and then we can get some things done.
You have somehow gotten my notes from this interview because you have gone down exactly in the order that I prepared for this interview today in the 2024 elections. Let's look right here at Roseanne Barr. Here's a clip with Piers Morgan.
Well, as I say, Piers, I don't think we're going to have an election. I say that. So, you might want to move on with that one. Next question.
Well, what do you think is going to happen?
I think there's many things that could happen, but it seems that, all of these trials that they keep putting him through.
All the trials, all the warfare, and now we see, and this is the point I was making earlier, and I told you we were going to come all the way back around to it. I'm not saying that I believe this, but I have a suspicion, I have a concern that maybe instead of battling Putin, that we're really coming up with, these people have proven that they are willing to stoop to no previous known lows to get power and what they want. They are losing this election. I watch a video every Sunday on YouTube that this guy is tracking the 2024 presidential election. Trump is ahead by 1.5%, maybe 2% on the most favorable basis. But in the Electoral College, he's up about 290 or 300, which is more than enough to get him across the line. Ergo, the October surprise, what will it be? And I think that's what Roseanne was talking about. And my fear is that Biden's going to get us in a world war. The Democrats will suspend the national elections, and they will be able to remain in power for as long as they can seemingly somehow pull it off. Does that?
Well, how about this? Lots of things worry me. I had one theory recently that Biden loses the election in November. He resigns, appoints Kamala president of the United States, who could absolve him and Hunter and anybody else of any by basically presidential order. And that basically would change the face of things going into the future, even if he loses. There are other things like, for example, if he has health problems and resigns, and they come up with another candidate who's much more likable. You have the fact that they basically control the Federal Reserve right now, and if they cut the rate in September and the stock market continues to explode, we've already had like 5 or 6 record highs in the stock market, both in the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ. If that continues, people say, "Oh, look, the economy's great. The interest rates come down, inflation's coming down, and Biden did something on the southern border," which we all know is BS. And I sorry for those weak years.
No, it's just a lie. It is a complete and utter lie. And they say that they're enforcing the southern border, but that's a lie because they're letting.
That's right.
The cap is what, 2,500 people a day. And
they don't care.
Then they blow through the cap and nothing else happens. But I know that I know. I don't know anything. I suspect that there will be an October surprise because I think these people's thirst and lust for power is so great that they don't care about the country. They only care about themselves. On Jerome Powell, Trump appointed him, by the way. And I get where you're coming from, but I don't give Biden any credit for the economy, but I do give the Federal Reserve I give them a lot of credit because I thought we were headed for a recession a year ago, and somehow they have managed to avoid it. And they are getting inflation down from 9% to 3% and some change. So I don't know, but here's the last question for you. I'm going to let you get on with your day. You worked hard to get to Congress. And I'm envious. I mean, you checked off one of the items on my bucket list. I don't know. I'm aging out. I might not ever get there, but who knows? If the moon and the stars align, we'll see. But anyway, do you enjoy it? Is the juice worth the squeeze for you?
Well, from the standpoint of I feel like we're participating in something historical. I believe I'm here as a messenger once again, trying to get us back to the days. And I love Trump. I love what he's doing. I think if he continue, I think he's doing a really good job this time around, by the way, of appealing to people, even though he's had problems with certain personalities. He's trying to hold out the olive branch. I've never seen him do that before. It shows a maturity and a development that really impresses me, because he already had great legislation. One of the greatest foreign policy presidents I've ever seen in my life. Abraham Accords were brilliant. What he did with Qasem Soleimani, what he did with North Korea, what he did to kowtow Russia by showing strength. That is phenomenal leadership, and people don't give him credit for that. He should have gotten the Nobel Peace Prize, quite frankly. But if you look at Biden, in comparison to Biden, one of the worst foreign, and I'm a foreign policy guru. I'm on the foreign relations. I'm on foreign affairs.
Congressman. It absolutely
He's amazing.
shows.
But what I think when it comes down to it, watching that maturity really come to fruition, I want to be part of that message. I want to be part of that outreach, that we can have people feel good about coming over to President Trump and say, you know what, it's still the right thing to do. And even if I disagree with his personality or some of his things, I really believe in the American dream. I believe that President Trump is their best possibility of achieving that or maintaining that in America.
So do you know Adam Schiff and Jerry Nadler and Nancy Pelosi and the squad? I mean, you serve with these people. Do you know them? Do you ride the elevator with them? Do you see them ever socially? I mean, I'm at a stage in my life where I don't have to be anywhere I don't want to be. And I don't have to put up with anybody I don't want to be around. I've worked really hard to get there. Okay.
Yeah.
How in the hell do you do it? How do you do it?
Well, so my mom always taught me to treat everybody with respect. And when we have honest agreements, we have honest agreements. And then when we have disagreements that are dishonest, that's where I got to pick on the legislation, not on the person. I can make fun of Biden all day long. That guy's an easy target. He looks like a Roomba, just bumping into things and turning the wrong way constantly. But that doesn't win me any friends. It doesn't win me any arguments. But if I pick on his legislation, whether he's mentally there or not, his legislation, his opinion on government is totally wrong. They're trying to cheat by this whole immigration crisis that they've created. This is nothing more than a power grab, and it will put us in ashes. They want to be king of the ashes. They don't care how it happens, because they're hemorrhaging votes because they're doing the wrong thing. They know that. If we focus on legislation, we'll win. If we get mean-spirited and make fun of an old man who falls down all the time, be careful, because the most likable candidate since 1980, the most likable candidate in every presidential race has won. And we have to make sure that we are likable as well as right.
That is great advice and a great note to end on. Thank you so much, Congressman. You truly are. And I look for nothing. I want nothing. I just really appreciate you. And you are truly one of the most special people that I have had the privilege of crossing paths with in my life. Keep fighting, and thank you for everything that you've done. Please come back on. I promise you I won't keep you for an hour next time.
It's very kind of you. Semper Fidelis. I hope you have a great week and a great 4th of July when it comes up.
Will you come down to West Palm Beach and we will VIP it? I'll take you to the best restaurants. We'll have a big old time.
Nice.
Thank you.
All
Thank
right.
you so
Have a great
much.
day. You
and
too.
Now it's my pleasure to welcome onto The Truth another good friend of mine and someone I really enjoy, and someone who has selflessly worked as hard as anybody I know to help preserve our free, fair elections. My friend Garland Favorito, he is the founder and head of Voter GA, and he's been doing it, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, since 2014? Is that right, Garland?
Actually, I started in 2002.
2002, good heavens. Well, that was before voter integrity was even a word in people's vocabulary. I mean, we assumed that we had honest, free elections in 2002. What alerted you to the problem?
I was alerted when I attended a conference in Cincinnati, Ohio, that indicated that they were telling us that was back in 2000. And it was the summer of 2000 when no one thinks about how they vote. And they said, beware, there's a whole new wave of unverifiable electronic voting coming to America. And you can't verify your votes. So I went to the convention skeptical, like most people do, and I intended to disprove their theory. And when it actually came to pass, I looked at it and I said, well, wait a minute, they're absolutely right. this system is, the new systems are not verifiable. They're completely paperless, and they cannot be audited. They can't even recount a race. They just reprint the previous unverifiable results. So I got involved in Georgia back in 2000. That was in 2000. And then I didn't think anything more about it for about a year. And suddenly Secretary of State Kathy Cox wants to make Georgia the test bed for statewide unverifiable voting nationwide. And that was when I got involved. We tried to stop that back in 2002. I explained to the Assistant Secretary of State, who's still there, by the way, and as well as the evaluators, that this is completely unverifiable. No corporation would ever use such a system, much less should a state use it. So that's where it all started, and it just went from there. And we've been trying to work the legislative angles, the executive branch angles, and the judicial angles, all to try to restore verifiable voting today. And we still don't have it because when they replaced the machines in 2020, after they were ruled, the old ones were ruled unconstitutional. I had told them that back in 2002, and they bought them anyway. But finally, in 2019, Judge Totenberg basically agreed with what I said 17 years earlier, that the systems are in fact unverifiable and unconstitutional.
17 years earlier, but 4 years later, I've read that decision where she said, and I'm paraphrasing, basically that the Dominion machines are not reliable. They can be interfered with, but we don't have time enough to fix it before the election. Here we are 4 years later, and we still have the machines that are not to be trusted. What is the matter? What is going on? And who, Garland, is behind this? Because look here. Hillary Clinton said that she was robbed of the election in 2016. Stacey Abrams said she was robbed of the election in 2018 when she ran against Brian Kemp. Donald Trump said, and I believe him, I agree with him, as we were just talking about with Congressman McCormick, that 2020 was stolen. So this is the point. This is what I'm trying to get to. Why can't we just all join hands and say, let's have honest, free, fair elections? But the problem seems to be that when you're on the winning side, you don't care if the machines are vulnerable and they can be used. But when you're on the losing side, oh, the election was stolen, but then nothing happens. But you're telling me that actually things have happened, that we are in better shape. Can we have a free, fair, honest election in 2024? And I got to tell you, 2,600 people right now are on Getter Live waiting for your answer. We're on Rumble Live, where we have another large audience listening, on YouTube Live, and, of course, the John Fredericks Media Network across the Southeast and the Eastern Seaboard. Garland Favorito, founder of Voter GA. Are we going to have a fair election in 2024?
So that's a great question, a very fair question. So just to recap where we are, just to finish where we were, unfortunately, we still have the voting machines. And they are a problem. They were declared that they were illegal, according to Judge Totenberg. They violated 2 Georgia statutes. She identified those statutes. We've explained that for a long time, but nothing's been done, to your point. So we still have the voting system that is unverifiable. It's a QR-coded voting system, never should have been purchased, and that's what the Secretary of State's telling the rest of Georgia to cast their votes on in 2020.
Here's what I don't understand. If I were king for a day, and I think I'm probably aging out, I'm not going to get to be king. It's really a severe disappointment for me. But why wouldn't you, if you were the Federal Elections Board or if you were the State Elections Board, Georgia is a technology state. And it is also the center for internet security. I'm trying to remember Tom, starts with an N. He founded the Internet Security Systems company right there on Spring Street in downtown Atlanta. If I were king for a day, I would appoint a blue ribbon committee of which I would make you chair, and I would get Tom, whose name I'm having a senior moment over, and the other 10 most, the smartest people in Georgia or on earth or in the United States, and we would form this blue ribbon commission, and we would design and put parameters down for a safe and secure voting machine and tabulation. Why can't we do that without having it interfered with, and why can't we make it sound enough that it can't be tampered with? And where is the lack of where does the lack of will to do that come from? Why haven't we done it?
Well, that's a great question. I think you were referring to Tom Noonan. Maybe?
Tom Noonan, thank you. I was going to go look it up. Thank you. You know, it does take a village, Garland. Thanks. Only thing I've ever agreed with Hillary Clinton about.
Yeah. So why can't we do that? Well, first of all, the Secretary of State has resisted everything that we've tried to do in spades. For a long time, he had gotten the governor and the legislature to go along. You know, we are waiting a decision on the Totenberg case. We've asked, first of all, for Judge Totenberg to ban the existing system based on her previous findings. We've asked for the audits to be declared wholly inadequate because they're illegitimate for a variety of reasons, which we could talk about. And we've asked for a special master to be established for the 2024 election. So that is what our co-plaintiff, Ricardo Davis, has asked for as part of the relief. So that's the judicial side. On the executive branch side, the state election board just decided to, they're going to implement monitoring of Fulton County in the 2024 election because of all their problems.
Who's going to monitor the Fulton County?
Huh?
Did you say there is a monitor for Fulton County?
The state election board has voted to fully monitor Fulton County for the 2024 election.
But here's the thing that, bravo, wonderful. But here's the state election board who, for the first time in 3 years, finally acknowledged that there were problems with 2020, but they would refuse to refer the matter to the Attorney General and the GBI. Where is the lack of will? I don't get it.
Yeah.
Don't you want to live in a free country?
Well, you know, you had some corruption in the board. You know, you had the one of the Republican members who's now since departed, Mr. Lindsay, actually refused to vote to refer. He's now gone. 15 people asked for his resignation before he made that vote. And he's been replaced by Janelle King, who will be at the next board meeting. Hopefully, we'll be able to bring this up again. But to your point, we probably do not want it to go to the Attorney General. What we really want is to refer it to an independent inspector who is operating under the authority of the state election board. Now that we think we've got the election board problems, maybe a better board than we had even a month ago.
Well, I call on the chairman of the Georgia Republican Party, Josh McCoon, to appoint Garland Favorito to the state elections board. Why wouldn't he have already done that? You should be on that board, Garland. And I want you to keep fighting. And I want you to know that I believe in you. And our listeners believe in you. We got 2,600 people on Getter right now. I'm reading the comments, and they're all very favorable. And thank you, American Hero 42, for your kind words, and the other people that have commented. But there are things to be excited about in terms of election reform, right? The legislature did step up and make some good changes. Tell us about it.
Yes, absolutely. That's what I want to tell you about. And just before we get there, though, I just want to mention, so not being a Republican, the chairman, Josh McCoon, could not appoint me to the board because I'm actually independent in the Constitution Party. So that would not work. However, Chairman McCoon has got the best person he possibly could have on that board right now, and that's Dr. Jan Johnston. She's been fantastic.
But don't we get two appointees? How many appointees? Tell me
there's
how
only one. In some counties, there are
there?
two.
I'm sorry?
In some counties, there are two. But in the state election board, the Republicans and Democrats get one each. And then the House Speaker gets one, and the Lieutenant Governor gets one, and the governor appoints the chair. So that's basically the way it's worked out now. And I think we have a much better board now than what we had even at the beginning of the year. So we've gotten some good replacements, and I think we're going to get some, hopefully, some action. I've been told I'm too optimistic, but I think we're going to get some good things.
Well, I mean, the fact of the matter is we can be pessimistic and go home and throw up our hands in disgust and live in a communist state, or we can fight like hell for our freedoms, which I think the vote is the foundation of. If you don't have an honest election, then what democracy is there? We will have none. So it's worth fighting for, and I commend you for doing it. But I talked to you a couple of weeks ago. You were kind to take my call, and you were in Europe. I'm very jealous of your trip. I'm down here just working like a dog all day long every day. But you had a great trip to Europe, but you and I had a chat in the airport when you were on your way home, and I was asking you about your lawsuit against the Fulton Board of Elections, and you told me some really good news. Now, that lawsuit. Brian Amaro ordered the absentee ballots to be unsealed and allow the plaintiffs, the petitioners, to examine them, but it never happened. And now you're telling me that we might get to see those ballots after all, if they're still there, which I highly suspect are not.
Yeah.
But
Fulton County claims that they're still there, and so we are going to get to see them one way or another if we can't get them from a judicial perspective. Because the legislature, we are going to be able to get them from a legislative perspective. So what's happened in the legislature for the last few years? I'm going to recap real quickly. And by the way, that was my first trip I'd ever been out of the country, so that was really fun. So, so here's what's happened in the legislature since 2020. I will start with the older stuff. They have banned all outdoor drop boxes. You can only have a drop box within an election office or a polling location. They've banned all direct and indirect private money given to counties for elections. No more Zuckerbucks. No more stuff in the drop boxes at midnight, between midnight and 6 a.m., like we saw on the videos before. They made ballot images public record. We're really excited about that. They had to replace signature matching with driver's license ID matching because Fulton County never did any signature matching in 2020. So those are a few of the things they did in the past. But now the good news is, John, what they've done just this past year, they've made all ballots subject to open records requests. So now we don't have to wait for that court decision like you were talking about. As of July 1, we'll be able to get those.
So you think you can get the entirety of the 2020 absentee ballots as of July 1? Have you already filed the notice and the request for the documents? And how are you going to get them?
We haven't filed it yet because it's not. It doesn't become law until July 1, and then they'll have 3 days to respond to us and give us a plan for giving it to us. So. And if we don't get it from the case, we're actually having a hearing on this case on Monday at 1:30. But it's just to adjust the defendants because of sovereign immunity issues. So that's going to occur Monday. But so we're going to be able to get these one way or another. Also, Harrison Floyd, his attorneys are asking for them as well. So they say they still exist. We hopefully are going to finally get them. I'm encouraged. But that was only one of the things that happened for 2024. They also added chain of custody provisions. improve that for the ballots and transferring the ballots and elections
Garland,
officials.
you keep fighting. We're out of time. I love your brother. You keep doing what you're doing. Thank you, Congressman Rich McCormick, Garland Favorito, founder and chairman of Voter GA. We'll have you back on. And let's just hope and pray that we can have an honest and fair election in 2024. This is The Truth. I'm John Gordon. We've told you the truth, and we'll be back here next Saturday at high noon to do it all over again. Thank you, everybody. Have a great weekend.